to see you here. Hope you're staying healthy. The bug isn't landed anywhere close to you. But we have an incredibly good speaker tonight, but to do the honors, Lisa, come on over.
For those of you who do not know me, my name is Elisa. I'm a junior here at Stanford. I'm in the Catholic leadership team, and Newman is kind of my baby in the CLT. So if everyone just wants to pull out their prayer card, if you don't have one, please close your eyes and just pray how you want along with us. So we're going to pray the Dear Jesus prayer. So in the name of the Father, Dear Jesus, light my soul with thy spirit and life, penetrate and possess my whole being so utterly that all my life may only be the radiance of thine. Stay with me, and then I shall begin to shine as thou shinest, so to shine as to be a light to others. Let me preach thee without preaching, not by words but by my example, by the catching force of the sympathetic influence of what I do, even in the fullness of the love my heart bears to thee. Amen. So tonight we have with us Professor Peter Walker. He was born in Newton, Massachusetts, and he's been a part of many ministries in the Catholic Church over the past 40 years. And in the past 20 years, he's been teaching religious studies and theology at Sacred Heart Prep, right in Atherton, California. From 1989 to 1992, he was part of the campus ministry team here at Stanford. And he was educated at Boston College, BA and MED, and Weston School of Theology, Master's in Divinity. And just on a quick side note, I know it's been a pretty rough time for the students here with us with midterms and whatnot, so I just want to urge you to try to let all of that go and really clear your mind for Professor Walker's speech, because I think it's going to be a pretty amazing one. So please join me in welcoming.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Nice to be with you this evening. I'm going to talk about a passage from John's Gospel, John chapter 9. And I'm going to use that gospel as a way of talking about what the church looked like at the end of the first century. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to give you some background information, and then read the passage, John 9. And on purpose, I want you to hear it. You'll have a copy of it later on. And then do a little analysis of that particular passage, because I think it deals with a lot of the issues that go into forming the church as we know it today. So first of all, some of my goals. My goal is to share a passage that's been a valuable source of spiritual nourishment for me for over 35 years. I first heard the passage analyzed by Father George McCrae, a Jesuit, in my studies, and it has stayed with me ever since. And since then, I followed it up with some research by Raymond Brown, did a commentary on it. But more importantly than the academic commentaries, in my mind, is it's continued to nourish me in my own life throughout that time. So I'm not going to give you I'm going to use Bible scholarship, but that's not my intention here. My intention here is to run the passage through biblical scholarship and to come out on the other side in a simple manner that offers nourishment to you. So that's my first thing, my first goal. My second goal is to read the passage as it reflects a particular community in the last third of the first century in the Common Era. Third, suggest some personal and communal applications for this passage, particularly the process of coming to our knowledge of who Jesus is. And I'm going to invite you to follow these up in your own small group. I offer you then some food for thought for your own discussions. First, a word of background about the fourth gospel, or John's gospel. And a note, a kind of serious note in the very beginning. Historically, this gospel has fueled anti-Jewish sentiments throughout the years. And I'm going to suggest to you from the outset that that is based primarily on a misinterpretation of the entire Gospel of John, of the fourth Gospel. But I wouldn't be honest if I didn't say that. A lot of people avoided the Gospel because of that danger. But I think you're going to see as we take it apart that any anti-Jewish sentiment that comes about because of the Gospel is wrongly named and really doesn't make any sense. And there's bad academics, bad spirituality. So that's my warning. So the Gospel tends to use a phrase sometimes, the Jews. And I'm going to kind of develop that a little bit. And at this point in time, think about that as Jewish authorities. I'd like to invite you to think about Jewish authorities when that phrase has come in. So first, authorship. The Gospel is the final product of a long reflection. In the form that we're going to hear it, it was from the last decade of the first century. Everyone knows the story of Jesus. They know the teachings of Jesus. That's not going to be its primary purpose, is to communicate that. It's a unique gospel separate from the synoptic gospels. It stands on its own. And I'd like to say it's brilliantly written. It's fabulously written. The theological dominates in the gospel. It has few biographical concerns about Jesus. It has a particular audience, a pluralistic audience that it's addressed to. And you'll see it. You'll see aspects of this audience when I go through John chapter 9. So where does it come from? It's drawn from multiple and numerous traditions about Jesus. And the stories eventually get grouped together and they get put down in a gospel and they get heavily edited. Not surprising. By the end of the first century, the form I'm going to read it has gone through those processes. And its primary concern in the last third of the first century is how to respond to some of the historical events that have taken place. One of the main audiences of the passage that I'm going to read and of the entire gospel are the Jewish Christians who have been kicked out of the synagogues after the year 70. It was in the year 70 that the central temple of Jerusalem came down by the Romans. And what happened after that was a split. So I'm suggesting to you that if you were a Jewish Christian, you went right into that synagogue. And the synagogues are the local places of study and worship all throughout what we would know as modern-day Israel. One temple of Jerusalem, run by the priesthood, the Jewish priesthood. Many synagogues throughout the land where Scripture was studied, where it was time to pray, where it was time to vehemently debate. And prior to the year 70, the Jewish Christians, the followers of Jesus, walked right in those synagogues because that was their home. Too often we caricature it as saying, well, there were Jews and there were Gentiles and there were others, and Jesus came along and then everybody all of a sudden followed him. I mean, it couldn't be closer to an untruth than all of that. It's a gradual process in that first century of Christianity eventually separating from Judaism. In that year 70, when the temple came down, the local synagogues no longer became the place that the Jewish followers of Jesus went. And that's important as you understand that. And you'll hear that reflected in the passage. So that's one, the audience. Jewish Christians who had been expelled after the year 70. So the temple falls. There is great debate among Jews and Jewish Christians in the synagogues. Who belongs, who doesn't belong? Why did the synagogue get taken down by the Romans? Great deal of tension in that. Second, the audience is directed towards Samaritan Jews. Not necessarily the passage that we're going to read, that I'm going to read to you and that we're going to analyze, but they're a part of the mix here. And just to recall that the temple had come down 600 years previous to this, okay? The Babylonians ripped the temple of Jerusalem down and force marched the people to Babylon. Well, the Samaritans were Jews, and the Samaritans were left behind for many, many reasons. And after about 70 years, when the Jews came back into what we know as Israel, to Jerusalem, and the destroyed temple and wanted to rebuild the temple, the Samaritan Jews showed up and said, we're here to help you. And there was a great deal of tension between the Samaritan Jews, as there is to this very day, if you go to Israel, Samaritan Jews and Jews associated with the temple. So part of this gospel is directed at them also, the fourth gospel. A third group. These would be Jewish Christians that were still associated with the synagogues. And these were Jewish Christians that, as they watched everything unfold, the exclaustration, the kicking out, the tension between the groups, they remained quiet. And they were not sure whether they should proclaim Jesus as the Messiah. And remember, because this sounds like, what are you making? No, I mean, this is that dynamism of that first century as it moves through very rapidly. And there also is a group that we're not going to get into tonight. It's not reflected here, but it is the followers of John the Baptist. There's a message in the Gospel of John for those folks too. The folks that hadn't quite come all the way over to see Jesus of Nazareth as the center of their religion. So you have a gospel that knows all the stories from 50, 60 years earlier, but has particular audiences that it's addressing in the late first century. The final group that the gospel addresses are the Gentile Christians, the Christians that that never had an association with Judaism. So that issue is debated, as you all know, in the mid-first century, the debate between Peter and Paul. Who is it that can be a follower of Jesus? Paul arguing anybody that wants to come, Jew, non-Jew. Peter arguing only Jews. Paul won the argument, Paul won the argument that the church was to be open to all. So they're kind of on the edge. Who is they? Those that were raised Gentile and had no Jewish connection. They weren't going into the synagogues, in and out of the synagogues once they were Christian. They were kind of left out of the scene. So all of those audiences are going to be addressed in this brilliantly written gospel, in this brilliantly written passage that I'm going to read to you. I'm going to suggest to you that nothing is here by accident, that it's written as if it was 7 scenes, characters coming and going. And we're way beyond Jesus healing a blind man. No doubt about the historicity of that, the healing powers of Jesus. Everybody knows that, the readers of the gospel. The author and editors are going to use that as a way of responding to those groupings that I just mentioned. So let's read it. And I want to read it in a kind of a dramatic fashion. 7 scenes. John chapter 9. The man born blind. Scene 1. Jesus, the man born blind, and Jesus' disciples. And as he passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, Rabbi, interesting, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus answered, neither he nor his parents sinned. It was so the works of God might be made visible through him. We have come to do the works of the one who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. And while I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he said this, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared it on the man's eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed, and he came back and was able to see. Get the debate. Why was he blind? The disciples are missing. Why he's blind? Maybe it's his parents. Maybe, those old traditions. And Jesus is going to cut right through why he was blind. He's blind so he can experience this miracle here. So Jesus doesn't enter into this inherited blindness argument. I heal so you can see my power. Straightforward healing. Get it? Beautiful, beautiful. Straightforward healing. Mud, smear, the talk between day and light. Light and blindness. Remember those communities that I mentioned earlier on. Direct, straightforward healing. The blind man doesn't have a name. No name. Scene 2. The neighbors and the man born blind. His neighbors and those that had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is." But others said, "Nah, it just looks like him." He said, "I am." But others said, "How were your eyes opened then?" And he replied, "The man called Jesus made clay and anointed my eyes and told me, 'Go wash.' And so I went and washed, and I was able to see." And they said to him, "Where is he?" "I don't know." Scene 2. I like the part, it's not really him, it just looks like him, right? So they're kind of denying the miracle in their presence. I mean, think there's lots of contemporary applications of that. His identity's changed, Notice how Jesus is referred, the man called Jesus. There's still a little bit apart from it. And who is he, and where is he, and where he is, I don't know. But what I do know is I can see. That's scene 2. Scene 3. The Pharisees, Jewish authorities, and the man born blind. They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made the clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man cannot be from God because he doesn't keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say, since he opened your eyes?" He is a prophet. He put clay on my eyes, I washed, and now I can see. And the debate about Jesus' healing and the Sabbath, the distraction, just a quick movement. The Pharisees is the lay movement within Judaism, welcome in all the temples, no doubt about it, that tried to protect the law by building a fence around it. Unfortunately, Christianity does an unfortunate number often on the Pharisees. They're trying to make the law livable in a pluralistic community, okay? You have the people of the temple, of the synagogue, they're the primary lay leaders, and that's what they're trying to do. But notice the legality of it all they're trying to do. They're trying to accommodate the world, but they don't know what to do with this particular action because they want to protect that Sabbath day. Take them as sincere. Too often in the Gospels, they're portrayed as not really being sincere. They're very sincere. They're very sincere about what it is that they're doing, what it is that they're trying to protect in many ways. So notice also the blind man, who Jesus is. He goes from that man they call Jesus to some insight into it. He's a prophet. Watch the development as we go. Scene 4. The Jewish authorities, the parents, and the blind man. Isn't this funny? They bring the parents in, right? There's a problem with the person. Get the parents in. I teach high school now. Get the parents in. Now, the Jewish authorities did not believe that he had been blind and gained sight until they summoned the parents of the one who had gained his sight. And they asked him, "Is this your son who you say was born blind? How does he now see?" And his parents said, get this, "We know he's our son, and we know that he was born blind. We do not know how he sees now, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age. He can speak for himself." Have you heard that in your own life too? Ask him. He's old enough. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish authorities. For the authorities had already agreed that anyone who acknowledged Jesus as the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. For this reason, the parents said, "He is of age. Question him." Get the parents in. "Is this your son? Was he blind? Who opened his eyes? Ask him. He's old enough." They're afraid of getting expelled. I mean, this shows you the very center of what is going on as it's functioning in John's gospel. It's trying to respond to those that either have been expelled or might be expelled due to what it is that they believe. Remember, before the Temple of Jerusalem came down, Jewish Christians freely associated in the synagogue and acknowledged Jesus as Messiah. Judaism was very pluralistic and welcoming to all, many perspectives, Pharisees, authorities. But after that year of 70, the tensions between Jewish Christians and Jewish authorities increased and increased and increased, and the Romans had it, and the Romans said, "Bring down the temple," and this huge tension between them. So again, I'm not clearly denying the healing. That's not what's going on. I'm trying to show you how it functions later on in the century and reflects a very, very important thing. And we're light years away from Jesus came and then everybody followed him and they went and they started opening up churches. I mean, that's just nonsense, historical nonsense. Okay, there's a process of it coming. And I'm mentioning only one strand of that process, how Judaism and Christianity separated towards the end of that century and became distinct. So notice, people without the historical knowledge for centuries have been using this as an anti-Jewish passage. I'm sorry, that's ignorant. Scene 5. The Jewish authorities, referred to as the Jews in the passage, I'm using authorities, and the man born blind. Remember where he started. Side of the road, blind, everybody knew who he was, donations, identity clear. So a second time, they called the man who had been born blind and said to him, "Give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner." He replied, "If he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know is I was blind and now I see." This is the guy by the side of the road standing up to the Jewish authorities in the synagogue. He's never been there before. So they said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" And he answered, "I told you already, and you didn't even want to listen. Why do you want to hear it again?" Ready for this one? do you want to become one of his disciples too? Whoa. They ridiculed him and said, you are that man's disciples. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man came from. The man answered them and said, oh, this is amazing that you don't know where he is from. Yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if one is devout and does his will, he listens to them. It is unheard of that anyone ever opened the eyes of a person born blind. If this man were not from God, he would not be able to do such a thing. They answered and said to him, you were born totally in sin, and you're trying to teach us? And they threw him out. Nothing is here by accident in this passage. Brilliantly crafted, reflecting that late first century community. Again, not denying Jesus healing blindness. That's not, everybody knows the stories of Jesus. It's functioning in a different way in that late first century community. Excuse me for just a second. Let's go to scene 6. It's been thrown out. Jesus and the man born blind. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, do you believe in the Son of Man? He answered and said, who is he, sir, that I may believe in him? And Jesus said to him, you have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he. He said, I do believe, Lord. And he worshiped him. And then Jesus said, I came into this world for judgment, so that those who do not see might see, and those who do see might become blind. See the full acknowledgement now of the blind man, of who Jesus is, coming to that identification of who Jesus is. He's still been thrown out. He's still been exclaustrated. He's still alienated from his family, like so many Jewish Christians in the late part of the first century. But he's being taken care of and nourished by Jesus. And he comes to acknowledgement of who Jesus is. Final scene. Scene 7. Nothing is here by accident. Brilliantly laid out. Some of the Pharisees and Jewish authorities who were with him heard this and said to him, surely we are not also blind, are we? And Jesus said to them, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you are saying, we see, and so your sin remains. It's a story about Jesus' healing and his healing power. It's a story about a man being touched physically and spiritually by Jesus. It's a story of a man of courage who speaks out and acknowledges Jesus as Lord. It's a story of standing up to those who are making it difficult to know Jesus. It's a story of Jesus offering hope to those who find themselves paying the price for what it is that they believe. Brilliantly crafted. Nothing is here by accident. Nurturing to that late first century community in a way beyond any of the synoptic gospels could have imagined. They were in different circumstances. And fully acknowledging the separation now of Christianity from Judaism as it has taken place as a gradual process. So, and I'm repeating myself because I'm going to be a little bit cautious here on purpose. Anyone that uses it as an anti-Jewish tract doesn't understand it. That's not what's going on in that. Yeah. It's the story of the separation there. So let's open it up. Just want to just check my watch for a second. Okay, we're in good shape. Let's open it up for about 8 minutes. And your comments are just as valid as any questions you might have. And you're going to have a chance in small groups to talk about it. But if I can help clarify something, or if you want to share something with the entire group, but now would be a time to do that. Yes?
The Gospels are for the first century church. How would the average lay person read? Because they had no printing press. How would it be used, the information in the Gospel be distributed?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the end.
How would it be how would the community find out what's in John? There's no printing press.
It would have been in scrolls. It would have been in scrolls. It would have been read at liturgies. They would have heard that at liturgies. And a very, very small grouping of people would have been able to do that and interpret it. So I want to make it sound like it's promulgated and announced everywhere. It would have been problematic. But what ends up happening, it's interesting, because I think you're onto something. So when it's a printing press and it's all printed at once in one spot in one place, the Gospels get seen as a unity, and they lose the original places and reasons why they were written, and they get distorted, and that's why this feeds into anti-Jewish sentiments. Because the ignorant person would say, well, not realize that they're all Jews. That's where the Christians are. The Jewish Christians are going right into the synagogue. The exceptions are the Samaritans, who had already been exclaustrated, the Gentile Christians who Paul was preaching to, and Peter wasn't even sure that they should be in the church. So see what happens is they get distorted. And listen to it. And you might say, you really emphasize it. I am, because historically it's been used. And then you read, and if people take it as an anti-Jewish tract, which it's not, and you say, this is the gospel of the Lord. Praise be to you, Lord Jesus Christ. Let's abuse more. I'm being sarcastic at the same time, but I really want to put that warning out, because that's there. That's there. So when you understand the inner workings of the gospel, it jumps out. And I'm going to suggest to you that, and fully I've spent my whole life doing this, there is a simplicity beyond making it complex. So I just made it complex with communities and hearers, but beyond that, that's nourished me. I can return to it without analytic. I can imagine myself as the neighbors. I can imagine myself as the parents. I can imagine myself as the blind man. Lord, how do I need to be healed? I can imagine myself as the disciples, sometimes debating about how, rather than attending to what should be attending to. So that's why it's nourished me. Yeah, thank you.
That's one of the 3 stories that are used in the Scrutiny Sundays.
That's right. It's used in Lent.
Part of this group is RCIA, and this story will be at liturgy in, I guess it would be late March.
Yeah.
Because we're building toward Easter.
Sunday
Do you know
night.
if this story had a similar liturgical use in the first century?
I couldn't tell you that. I don't know. I doubt it.
Do you know how far back that usage goes?
I would be guessing. I'd say 3rd century. That's a guess. Other comments or questions?
You said this had implications for the church today
Me?
and membership and participation.
I'm listening. I'm
I'm
getting
just
something.
curious where you're going to go with that, that's all.
2 of the questions that you're going to answer are, where is it? Okay. I got it. I found it. Thank you. 2 of the questions are, let me read all 6 so you hear them. How does your faith journey parallel that of the blind man in John 9? When have you behaved like the Pharisees or the Jewish authorities of John 9? When have you behaved like the parents of the blind man? How does the situation of John 9 parallel what you have seen and experienced in the Christian community? Like that. 5. How does the situation in John 9 parallel what you have seen and experienced in the Roman Catholic community? We're dealing with some of these issues. I mean, we have been. And what is the most meaningful lesson that comes out of John 9? So I haven't given it a lot of thought tonight about the implications. I just feel it. Sometimes the synagogue was a very pluralistic place that welcomed all and many, and was narrowed down in many respects. And you can use any image you want, okay? At some points in time, I think that the Roman Catholic and the Christian community at large has been a very embracive, pluralistic place. At other times, it's kind of thrown people out, just like the gospel. So that's my kind of gut reaction to it. That's how it's nourished me in some respect. But you can get a chance to talk about it. Yeah.
Could you go on a little further? We have the progressive scene of the blind man.
Yeah.
But there also seems to be the progressive blindness of the Pharisees.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It almost goes like this. It's brilliantly written. It's brilliantly written. Yeah. It is a rejection of the legalistic Pharisees. It is definitely a rejection there. Yeah, hop in.
By the end of the passage, doesn't Jesus almost invert the disciples'
Absolutely does.
assumptions about sin?
Absolutely does. Nothing is there by accident. That first debate scene has been inverted in the last one. I agree totally.
Yeah, on the fact that Jesus healed on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
How does that play into this conflict? Since the Christian
let me interpret for a second. I think it's a question that evades the reality of the healing and the reality of the ministry. It's going immediately to a legalistic interpretation. And again, remember the original intention of the Pharisees, and it sounds like I'm apologizing, I'm not, is to make it broad enough so lots more people fit in. And as it comes through Christianity, it kind of gets distorted as that's not what they're doing. They kind of get caricatured a little bit, but that's how it functions in the gospel. And the Pharisees are more active in the second half of the first century than they are in the first half of the first century. So some of the things that happen in the second half get pushed back as if they happened in Jesus' time. So that's functioning, that's going on too.
That because in the first half, we also have the scribes.
That's right, that's right. The pluralism with Judaism. All right, I'm going to stop and let you have a conversation with one another. It's been really nice being with you. The last time I was here, not the last time, I was here in '89 and my office was in the clubhouse, and I was here for the earthquake, and the old Union shook and shook. I thought it was coming down, and I'm from Boston, and I said, what did I say, Nancy? Give me a snowstorm any day of the week. And I was on the emergency response team at Stanford. They needed to respond to me. I was supposed to be a part of, and they're showing me body bags and this kind of thing, and I'm supposed to be, and I just said, get me out of here. Why did I come across country? Nice being with you tonight. Thank you.